Yo, yo, yo. It's Thursday night, the best night in car audio, if you ask me. I'm your boy Hi-Fi Vega, joined as always by the man, the myth, the legend, Dean Bayette.
Well, not always. I mean, you did have Fro.
I did have Fro.
I was easily replaced by Fro.
Yeah.
I
Listen,
mean, you
Fro
could,
knows audio.
yeah, could have. You should. Because next week I'll be in at SEMA, so
Yeah.
see if you can fill in again if you want, or just enjoy a nice week off.
Yeah, I might take the week off. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what's new and exciting in the land of Hi-Fi Vega?
Nothing much. I just tested another piece of crap amp, so that was fun.
Oh, what'd you test?
It was the Hayunka 410
Oh,
lamp.
that sounds like the things that they yell out in that one game, like Hayonka, you know,
Yeah.
fire like little icicles shoot out of their fingers. Hayonka.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
what's up, Andrew? We tested an amp this week also.
Wait, did I watch that one?
I don't know.
I think I watched. I know I watched one. I can't remember.
Mats or Mats?
Ah, okay. Is that really how it's said? Yes, yes, I remember
I
because
believe it's just called Mats, but until someone corrects me, I'm just gonna say
MMS.
MMS.
I mean, listen, I've heard it both ways, honestly. So I didn't know.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. Thank you. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, it's funny because our buddy Mel works there now, and he reached out to us and he was like, "Hey, we'd really like you to test an amplifier." We're like, "Sure," and it's two part. So they sent us the amplifier. They also sent us the 6x9 inch subwoofers.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna put those in Fernando's car. One of the guys is building us a box, and I forget who. It's one of the, I think it's El Fernandez, or it's one of those that. Anyways, one of those guys is building a box. Anyways, they're gonna go in there. We're gonna power them off of that amp. But we wanted to, obviously they wanted a dyno video and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So here's the secret on DIY. We've tested all of them so that you guys know that they work. They paid us to test them all so that when you guys get your hands on them, they pass. So, I mean, keep testing them, but they're all going to pass.
Yeah. So that's like, yeah, that's quite a few dyno videos kind of, because Derek tested a little bitty amp.
Oh, nice.
Like this big. And
that's
then
what I thought I was testing when I saw that little tiny thing. I was like, Jesus.
He played these speakers on them, like he said.
Oh, those are cute. Yeah.
These little speakers
and computer speakers.
And the quad box as well. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Mine ended up being terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Trash.
Exactly.
It was, yeah, hey, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, but I think you guys like it when you lose some. I think
no.
watching those fail is fun.
Dude, I definitely hate posting a video of a product that doesn't do well. Matter of fact, I considered not doing this one, but I already had so much work into it. And here's the thing: they have this company, like their component set is pretty good for the money. The subwoofer is good for the money, so they like slid this one in.
Right.
So it's like, well, this one's not good for the money or any money.
I mean, it happens. I mean, hey man, they're not all gonna hit it out of the park, right?
Yeah.
Every now and then you're gonna get one, foul bow. And that is my baseball analogy for anything, because I don't do baseball. What's up, everyone? I don't think people lack creativity and imagination. I feel like original thought is dead, which is basically the same thing. But I just feel that it's hard to come up with original anymore because it's a narrow line.
Right.
Anytime something amazing comes out that hasn't been done before, it's usually explosive. And even then it's like, oh my god, it's like immediately six things that are identical to it will come out.
Oh yeah.
And then it just becomes
borrowed, man. Everything's borrowed. Like a lot of streams will say yo 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 when they start, I might have been the first person in car audio to do that, but I got it from Yo MTV Raps.
Yeah.
And Over and Dre. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know, so I borrowed it from them. Then it just gets borrowed and it gets passed on down along. So it's the way it works.
As far as like the MMATs, what does it stand for? I honestly don't know. When we were in Dallas, we spent the day when we were out at Jay's Alarm or Jay's Tent. I'm sorry, when we were at Jay's Tent, Jay's Alarm is in California. We were at Jay's Tent. We spent the day with him there because Mel brought him over, and like great stories. Oh my gosh. And I would love to get him on and just kind of have him break that down, even though you guys hate those type of videos when we do them because you guys just want to know what 6.5 sound best.
What's 6.5 sound best?
Yeah, but I mean, like the Class D and like how that came to be and why they were one of the first to do Class D. That design, there's a whole story behind that. It was wonderful. I really, and there again, up until Mel got involved with them, I really don't know much about them. So
yeah, Max was pretty big in this area. You had like US Amps was obviously pretty big, but Matt's was kind of the one that they're compact. They're not the big AB amps. They're compact Class D, and they always did the power. Always.
Dude, that sucks. Blowing radiator in wife's car. Oh, that's the worst. Car repairs suck, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think the worst car repair I ever did was the transmission in Haley's car.
Yeah,
that was brutal. No, it was ridiculous. Anyways, oh yeah, the green Astro van back in the day was awesome. There you go. I don't know. Wasn't a bass head in that regard.
Yeah, I don't.
There was some original bass heads out there that are just well beyond my my history as far as all that goes. My idea of a bass head back in the day was I got 212s, I got 215s. Yeah. Then buddies of mine were the Eason brothers. They have a place down here. They were big into crunch back in the day, and and all that. And they still have a bunch of stuff. I believe right now they're doing a lot with Concrete Audio, and Jethro, the younger one, has his own like Eternal line or Jet Eternals or some shit like that. Anyways, those guys were nuts when it came to SPL.
Yeah, I was around quite a few just competing, so that there was quite a few big builds that I was around, but not not like today. Big builds for back in the day, like a bunch of Eclipse Titanium 12s, I think was one of them. And then probably the biggest one around here was 72 Phoenix Gold XS10s on a million XS 2500 amps.
As far as was crunch ever any good, of course it was. That was all the crunch, the Lanzar, the Hyphonics, all that stuff all came from the same place out in California. That was all the same guy. Was that Zed? Or I don't remember who the hell it was.
Yeah, Zed made a lot of their amps.
Yeah, so it was all the same crap.
Their subs were made by Eminence.
Everybody's subs were made by
right.
Fane, Gauss, and Eminence. All those subs back in the day were made by Fane, Gauss, and Eminence. So, and then the guys that figured it out just went and bought the yeah.
Well, and then like
an EV,
the good one, like the Eclipse Titaniums, those were TC Sounds, and when like TC Sounds came out, they kind of changed the game for subs because we hadn't seen fat roll surrounds very much before then. So once those started popping, and I was like, oh, I love these Eclipse Titaniums, find out that they're actually TC Sounds, then you start seeing those, and it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah. When did Sunfire drop that little?
Remember the Junior, the Sunfire Junior? They had the big one, and then they had the Junior with the 2.8s.
Yeah.
But they also, like, here's the thing I want to know. They claimed 2,000 watt amp or 1,000 watt amp on the little one. The big one they claim 2,000, but it plugs into 110. I guess you could get 2,000. Maybe it's rated
Well,
higher than I'm thinking. I
I mean,
was
you
just
just need
thinking
it.
like,
I mean, home audio. I mean, it's just. I mean, dude,
yeah,
as long as Florida Power can back you up. I
yeah,
mean,
that's
I've seen some really big home amps. So
right. I'd love to see like how much can you pull out of a 15 amp service, which is
yeah, but
standard.
the thing is the reality is you give somebody like fuck, the amount of amplifiers I have powering my home stereo that the needles barely move, and I guarantee you those I can make this a lot louder than a car.
Yeah,
And ain't no lights blinking.
yeah.
Um, so I yeah, home is a whole nother animal. I don't want to even get involved in.
Yeah, I mean,
Other than plugging a subwoofer in and watching it hop across the floor.
surely there's got to be someone like Derek for home audio, right? We just
Oh
don't have.
yeah, well I'm sure there is, but
Yeah, sure.
you know,
Yeah. I need, I need
but
to, I
who
need
wants?
to look into that.
I mean, who wants to? Who? I mean, yeah, but the home audio guys aren't like the car audio guys, man. They're way uppity. They sit there and argue over like cables and shit, and
Yeah.
whether shit should sit on the floor and all this other nonsense. So
I
it's
just need to
like,
see the guy that's like, hey, this amp says it's 5,000 watts out of your 15 amp service. Like, no, it's not. It's
yeah,
like,
but I don't think they have amps like that though. I mean, they must, but
yeah.
I don't think they do. I mean, why would you?
Those damn Behringer iNukes and they have some pretty big ones. You don't need a lot of power in home audio as you
No.
do car audio. So it's just curious because I've never actually looked into it.
So Mike says Sunfire would have been late 90s as I was working home theater install then. The Sunfire subs were beasts. They were hard to keep in one spot. Yeah, I heard they kind of vibrated around the floor because it was just a little tiny box.
Yeah.
But
I
I
had
think,
one with a blown amp.
what's that?
I had one with a blown amp. So
Oh, perfect.
I repurposed the subs
Nice.
and, they weren't as cool in the car as in home. But
What are your thoughts on cable risers, Dean? If they look really cool and they're made out of acrylic and I need them to wire an amp in a car, I love them. But as far as my house, that's like the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I mean, the air retention is higher. And yeah.
yeah.
Anal. Anyways. But the topic we have is probably about the same. They all think they're geniuses. They all know everything. The all knowing. I mean, if I was going to buy a home audio system now and like I was just going to walk in, I would just be like, look, I don't care what's the best. I'm sure there's something better, but I really just want a Macintosh system. And for no other reason, they're just awesome looking.
Yeah.
And I know there's better stuff, but I don't care.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not. It depends on the type. There might be a person that's like, I want performance at all costs. I don't care what the brand is. I want the best.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, there's lots of those guys.
Yeah, I know that guy because the guy that has the Brax system, he has a home audio system too, and he's got Macintosh Power, but his home receiver is not, and he was talking to me about that, and it's like he spent a fortune on his home receiver, so I was like, okay,
yeah,
I don't have that.
Well, it's like when you go. So if I went into home audio, I know very little about home audio.
Me too.
I'm going in there, so my move's not going to be telling the home audio guy what to do. I might tell him like, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm here to do. You're the professional,
right?
Guide me in some way. This is what I'm looking for. What do you have?"
Well, and I think I'm sure they have the same heartache that we have, but I feel like in a house, it's almost a little easier because you say, "Hey, listen, like I want audio in all my rooms, or I want surround sound. I want to be able to watch movies. I want a big screen, and it's probably a little more cookie cutter. I know they have a ton of stuff, but I feel it's a little bit more cookie cutter. Whereas, car audio for some reason is still that thing where it's like, oh, I know more than you do. I've been doing. I've had stereos in my car since the early 90s. It's like, okay, I mean, tell me all about them. What have you had?
And it's like, well, why are you here then? That's the question. If you know so much, why are you here?
Yeah.
Because me, in like, if I had a brand new car that I want to mess with, of course I'm gonna go get it installed. And I might say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And like I said, if I'm going somewhere, I'm not typically gonna bring equipment because I don't want to. I want the equipment I buy to be from the people. In case something goes wrong, they fix it, and I don't got to mess with it. But in an older vehicle, I wouldn't have no one doing install for me because this is something I could do myself because I already know. But on the other hand, there is people that will show up. They have the experience and knowledge or whatever, but for whatever reason, they want to micromanage the way that someone else is doing
it. Well, so here's an odd one, right? So picture this scenario. Guy's got a vehicle and he had a stereo put in it 10 years ago. Drove the car for 10 years. Okay. He enjoyed the way it sounds.
Yeah.
He's had it for 10 years, but he's got 10-year-old equipment. Hell, it could be 12-year-old equipment because who knows how old it was when they sold it to him. So let's say, at least 10-year-old equipment. He's got a brand new car, brand new problems, and he rolls up in there. And he didn't just get any car. He fucking upgraded. He's been saving for the last 10 years. So, he went and got something that's like 3-way up front, all up mixed, fucking branded amplifier of some kind. And he took out a pair of 6.5-inch components and a 4-channel amp and a mono block and some subs. And he's like, yeah, man, I want to get this in my new vehicle. And you're like, are you out of your mind? It's like, no, like, this isn't going to work in this car. Well, I mean, I've been listening like this. Yeah, but that was a different car. You don't have that car anymore. You have this car. This car is different. And so having to deal with that is a fun one. I don't enjoy it. Or, and the same one is the other one that's always fun that usually dovetails into that is if you roll into a place and you've already got a premium audio system in the car. So Beats, Bose, BO, Dre, pick one, Infinity, Boston Acoustic, all the brands.
Right.
And you want it to sound better. And you think that you can just, I don't know, maybe replace a pair of speakers. You got like $1,000 on your brain, maybe 1,200, and you're like, I want this thing to sound better for $1,200, and you're just like, huh? How? No, like,
yeah.
And so, but in their mind, you're wrong because they've done this before, and they know, because, I mean, there again, in the grand scheme of things, who understands, like, who in their right mind can look at a car and go, oh, that has dynamic EQ. Oh, that has up mixing. Oh, that has, filtering done, whether it be high pass, low pass, or all pass.
Yeah.
And I don't mean all frequencies. I mean the all pass filter, or it has active crossover, or has dynamic EQ would be the cool way of saying bass roll off, because I hate bass roll off. It's a dumb fucking word. So who, they just volume up, volume down, bass, mid, treble, everything's, there's nothing behind that.
Yeah.
So they don't understand what a tweeter playing tweeter frequencies and mid, how a 3-way set is put into a car, time alignment. They don't understand any of that crap. But they'll come in and say, hey, I've done this before. And you're wrong.
And then what happens after that? It's like, all right, then.
Well, what happens after that is you sell them a $10,000 system, and you're like, this is what you need, and they're just kind of like, whoa. I'm like, listen, you got a $100,000 car because that's what they cost now, and or you got an $80,000 car, or even a $60,000 car. I mean, cars are freaking ridiculous, and so you got to kind of back them out of their all right, here's what's in your car. You have a 14-channel amplifier in your car. You have a 10-channel amplifier in your car. We're not going to get that with 4 channels.
Yeah.
You know, and then they go, well, what about a passive crossover? And you're like, what about a passive crossover? You know, what about equalization? If we're you remember equalization, you had a little slide ruler thing. You want us to put one of those somewhere in your dash?
V pattern for the win.
You know, woo,
Scoop the heads.
$1,000 in the 90s was a huge sound upgrade compared to $1,000.
Oh no, it wasn't, man. No, it wasn't. You
Yeah.
Orion 225 costs $599 by
Yeah.
itself. That's a
I think what he's saying though is you could buy a cassette player 1990, because remember I started in 1990, so I know this. This is what I did. You could buy a cassette player, a higher end cassette player with Dolby B noise reduction, auto reverse, ooh, and you know four sets of speakers, you know, coaxials all the way around, because back in the 90s components weren't really a thing. There were companies that sold them, but most of that stuff was still a la carte. JBL had the GT series was a component, but we still had giant tweeters. Kind of like, it's funny because what's old is new again. So you know, had giant peerless tweeters and giant. Everyone was buying those tweeters. MTX had them. Orion had them. Precision Power had them. Everybody had those giant 3-inch tweeters. There's no very rarely would you find a tweeter with a neo magnet. I mean, the TO6 tweeter from JBL was probably the thing, but Boston Acoustics, you know, so it was very high end. You're getting into these components. You weren't seeing them in the moderate price point.
Right.
So, you know, we'd put in a lot of coaxials back then. You started to see more components out of the 90s, like as the 90s weaned on. But yeah, for $1,000, you could get some stuff. Factory sound system,
you could get
90 sucked. Yeah, because they weren't putting any thought into it.
I think that $1,000 today will get you way more than it did in the 90s, even if you don't account for inflation.
Well, yes, and I know where you're going with that, because there are products that are cheaper now. Back then, everything was made here in America. Granted, it was reasonably priced still, but yeah, you know, $1,000. Yeah, I mean, the Macintosh MC420 when that came out was $899 for a 50 watt by 4 amplifier.
Yeah.
The only thing that killed Macintosh was the CVA 1000. When the CVA 1000 dropped, that was the writing on the wall, because that was $1,000 in dash. There was no media. Like, you had to add a changer. There was no disc player. There was no DVD. It was literally a screen with an AM/FM tuner that came out of your dash for $1,000. The DVD player was $600. The CD changer for it it would have to be AI, so that would have been $350. $350, $400, depending on who you got it from. So $1,400 got you a CD player with that folded out of the dash.
Yeah.
You know, so the complete package was $2,500,
and that's what the Sony had one similar that was a deadhead, but it had the CD player built in. But to get the EQ and the crossovers and the time alignment, you had to have the brain.
Yeah, but that was much later. That was
that was late 90s.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, the Pioneer Z1, that was, or D1, Z1. I don't know, but that was the turning point for like high end in dash, and that didn't come with shit. You had to buy everything, but man, it was like it just killed it. Was it AINet or MBus? That was AINet, because that was the one you could plug the alarm into, Fro. Remember, you could plug the alarm into the screen? That was fun.
Wait, what did a 7909 cost new?
$1,000. $899.
Okay.
It was $899 when I bought it, or it was $999 when I bought it. That was a CD player.
Right.
Straight CD player. Clarion came out with 2 CD players. They both had 4-channel preamp output. One of them had 22 watts by 2, and the other one had no power.
Yeah.
And they were like we were selling, I think they were like $289. And that was like, holy shit, that was like the cheapest CD player, but you couldn't hook it. You had to sell an amplifier, like,
right.
because to get it at that price, they had to just like
And
take
those
it.
end up being the most coveted ones, the deadheads. That's ones people, the collectors
Yeah, but
want.
at the time, this was just a cheap piece of crap.
Yeah.
So, nobody, the guy buying it for $249 was like, he was one step out of it was way before the 6707 and 7707.
Yeah,
But
that was I'm trying to think. It wasn't a copper chassis, I know for sure.
no, these were base model, man. It was cheap. This, like,
Yeah.
dude, trust me, these were stripped down hunks of crap. Like 6 character displays that were orange. I mean, it was basic. But this was like, this was early 90s. The other thing too is, like, Calarium back in the day, you could plug in a EQ module. So they had an EQ DSP module that you could plug in. A little silver box that was cheap. They
Yeah.
made a couple different versions of it. That was really fun. Nobody knew what to do with those because EQ. I think EQ has always been a like, oh, wait, what? Huh? Oh, hold on. Oh,
I could never afford them because by the time I came around, it was the DRZ. What's the 72, 79 or 7225 or something? It's called the ZRZ overseas, but that was their super high end one.
yeah.
But that was mid to late 90s, probably 97 when it came out.
Software updates unavailable for sure. Need help getting more mid bass from an active 3-way by putting passenger side inverted phase, but sounds weird sitting in that side. Maybe DSP times 2. Yeah, probably don't want to do that. What was it? Arc has their little epicenter, but it isn't it's an epicenter for highs. I can't remember what it's called. That's designed to help in this situation. I would say I'm hoping you have a regular head unit, not a factory head unit. The other thing too is, obviously, I'm assuming you sound treated the hell out of it, and the door panel isn't rattling. Yeah, mid bass is a tough one. The other thing too is check your time alignment individually if you can, because a lot of the times, and check the sub. Make sure you're doing this with the sub playing. So, a lot of people will time align the front mid bass and not check the sub, and what happens is at higher volumes, when the sub is playing, or you're playing the sub too low and not letting the sub pick up the lower mid bass, which, this is one of the things that Andy always kind of just gets on people about. It's like they play down to 80, 70 hertz. That's it. And there's a reason for that if you have a subwoofer. So, he kind of gets all squirrely when people are like, dude, I want my doors to just hammer. And it's like, yeah, one pair of 6.5s, man. It ain't going to do that. So definitely check the alignment. If you have a DSP, I shut everything off and just do like a phase check or polarity pop and see where it's coming from, and then do the people talking where, it's left, right, center, the whole nonsense, and see where she's coming from, and then turn your subwoofer up. The other thing too is if you're using rear fill, check the rear fill, because sometimes you can get weird stuff between the front and rear doors where it will cause a problem. Sometimes you need to flip both of the rears 180, and that will help bring the mid bass back up front. The other thing too is you could also have, this is something that Mitchell talks about all the time, is that you could have frequencies, masking frequencies. So you might be wanting to get mid bass, but your mid range is too loud and it's drowning out your mid bass. So by turning down your mid range, your mid bass will get louder. So that's the other thing too, is that you have to figure out what the loudest thing in the car is, and then if you want something that's louder than that, you have to turn those down. So by turning something down, you actually make something else louder. It's crazy, but these are the things that you know, when we're tuning a car, we sit and listen to figure out like, oh, well, that's not good. We should, you know, don't want to turn that down.
Some cars are hard to get decent mid bass into, depending on the setup. Like, have you had a system in there where you had good mid bass? So is it like proven that you can get decent mid bass out of
Yeah.
there?
Oh
Like
yeah.
the
Nothing's more.
Trooper,
Yeah.
it's the mid ranges sit on the door card, and they are somewhat anchored to the rest of the door, but it's not the best situation for mid bass.
my time alignment with my alarm clock, and it's still never right. Yeah. Totally I understand. Yeah. But that's those are some things that can cause that. That's funny. That's another one I wish they'd have come up with a better name for.
Time alignment.
Time alignment, because it's just like, you know, you get these guys that start, you're not actually adding time. It's like, all right, delay alignment. I mean, what? It's kind of weird. It's funny what people get excited about. Time alignment with tape measure, kill mat, foam all around, whole truck. Both rears are flipped already. LR12. Linkwitz Riley 24 on, or it has a 12 on door speakers. Will Dialect Rive figure everything out for me? Might buy it. Yeah, so like Dirac has the ability to add in all pass filters. And so technically, yeah, because that's kind of what very smidge of what Gladen and Moscone are doing with Barney is that they're using a highly modified version to their needs of something like Dirac, and it can go in and it will evaluate. And if you've ever heard like a key, you know, there again, it's not Dirac, it's principles are there, but they're listening. It's smarter than what we are. So, but it should be 24. Linkwitz is 24. 12 is kind of odd. I don't think anybody ever uses Linkwitz 12. Butterworth 12 will get you a bigger bottom end. You just have to be cognitive of the subwoofer. But every now and then, if we want more mid bass, we'll put the bottom of the mid bass Butterworth 12 dB, because we're not worried about it interfering with the sub, because the sub is just going to be back there going boom, bitch. And we want a stronger, as long as the speaker can take it, then we'll cross the mid bass over at Butterworth 12, and that will bring us in a lot of mid bass. You know,
I feel like he's got the tools that he can play around with and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of getting in there and actually playing with it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of guys, like when you tell them to turn down the loudest thing to make the quietest thing louder, it's common sense. Not saying anybody needs that, right. But it's counterproductive, because we're always sitting there. No, we need to turn it up. It's like, no, turn it down.
Well, the option is turn that part down or double the power to the part that's low.
Well, and that's why we like staggered power.
Right, yeah.
And see, these are all the conversations that customer, back to the topic, that comes in, he knows best.
Yeah.
He knows all this shit. You know, he's like, you know, what do you mean you got to tune my car? And it's like, yeah, bass mid and treble ain't going to do it, dude. You know, but then it kind of kicks you in the ass, because you sit there and you're like, you know, your car has 14 speakers in it and they couldn't get that shit right. What are you going to do with 4 or 6? You know, it's like, give me 6 good speakers. You can keep the 14 and I'll do a much better job.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, so I'm driving Cassie's car to go to dinner this weekend, and it's beautiful outside. So we got the sunroof open, the windows down. Like, you know what? Let's jam some Tesla right now. You turn it up, sounds wonderful till about halfway. Then after that, it's about the same volume.
Yeah, you got that Mercedes, bro.
I know, and it's just like I know how the people feel when they have that, and it's like I like this sound, but it's throttling me back. It stopped me right here.
It's not throttling. And there again, it's not throttling you back. It's dynamic EQ. See, all right. So, a guy in the comment says, Andrew says, I tuned my system by turning loud on. So I was recently talking with my buddy at JVC Kenwood this week, and he was doing a bunch of radio dynos for demos. To show how the Kenwood radios don't clip, and how other manufacturers, which we've seen it all before, we all know this, they clip. And he was like, I was showing him, I turned loudness on, I did all this, and the loudness one is the one that I, oh, of course the loudness is not going to clip. Why would it clip? I was like, well, everyone always says it causes distortion, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, did you watch our video we did with that? And he's like, yeah, but like my demo doesn't work as good as your demo. I'm like, well, that's because you don't have an IRTA2 and have an app that you can adjust the bandwidth. So yeah, it's not as cool as ours, but it's easy enough to solve. I'll sell you one. But loudness is great, and that's why your car sounds good till about halfway up, because you're getting all the loudness. So it's giving you that cool flying V EQ happiness. And then as you turn it up, it does this, and you lose all the, now the mid-range is caught up to the treble and the bass. And it's like, shit, I don't want it to do that. I want it to stay quiet. So now the problem is it would, if you turn the mid-range down at higher volumes, it'll probably sound better. But then when you turn it down, it'll sound like crap.
Yeah.
You have to decide, which guy am I? Am I the guy playing at the top, in which case turn the mid-range down, blast the fuck out of it, or am I the guy playing it at the bottom, in which case I want the mid-range flat and let the dynamic EQ do the rest. Or you're just like me and don't give a shit. If it plays at 30, you turn it to 30 and you just drive.
Yeah.
And go, it's not loud enough.
You can't hear it with the windows down. It's like, oh, great. Excellent.
Well, you can't hear it with the windows down and the top off.
Yeah.
So exactly. I had to make a drive too. I actually took my car out this weekend. I had to go see the girls because, apparently I have a wife and daughter. Every now and then I want to see them. I got home and they left. So they're like, hey, you should come up where we're at and for the week or for the Sunday. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to sleep. Sleeping's for pussies. Team no sleep. Fuck. So I took my car, which I never do. Haley was freaking out. She's like, why didn't you drive my car? And I go, I never drive my car anywhere. I thought it'd be fun. It's like it was like a 2-hour drive there, 2 hour up, 2 hour back. As long as I've ever driven my car. Yeah. But dude, 30 the whole way. And the whole time I'm going, this sucks balls.
Yeah. Well, that's like when you get to that the car was telling me like it's all the way in. This is all I got.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like this is what we're gonna deal with then. But yeah, it's definitely in my mind now that I need to get in there and fix that situation, because if it could go louder with the way it sounds now, I'd be fine with it. But it's just, it's for mild volume.
Yeah, I was just reading Brian's little comment there. And there again, you never felt the need to use it on, hey, that's okay. Means you got pretty good hearing. I don't. My hearing's crap. So I like a little boost in the bottom end. It's treble.
Yeah.
Active crossovers are superior over passive crossovers. And that's a debate, okay? So the one aspect of it that is true is that if you're doing something that has power, lots of power, then yes, you want to go active, because the passive crossovers will only allow you to pass so much power. It's not going to rob your power. It's just going to limit the extent of how much power you can actually put through it. But if you really think that statement through, it's not totally accurate, because let's say, for example, you can go buy a set of Focal K2s, okay, and they come with an extremely extensive passive crossover. It has attenuation for the mid range. It has the ability to shift the mid range. It has attenuation for the tweeter. So there's like 4 adjustments you can do on the passive crossover. It's a highly designed piece that is taking in consideration, okay, so we've put a lot of research into this, but no, you don't need it because you're way smarter than our engineers are. Then you might be. But the reality is that it's a piece that you can put into a car, install, put 2 channels of audio to it, 4 channels of audio if you have the 3-way set, and there is some attenuation there that you can do to custom the sound, and it's going to sound great. Or you can spend a lot more money and get 6 channels of audio with a DSP, do all that nonsense. So it just depends. Now, in the bigger picture, I have a pretty expensive set of home speakers that I have a left and right power wire going to. And there's more than one driver in that cabinet. And I know there's giant passive crossovers in there because I bought them. Okay. So, and it does a great job.
Yeah.
So, there's some home speakers that have multiple power inputs that still go into passive crossovers, and some of them, so there again, if it's designed properly, I hate blanket statements that are supposed to just cover everything, because it's case by case, and there are some good and some bad, but we've done plenty of passive systems in our day where the customer's goals were met and exceeded because of what we did. So it's a tool, and when used properly, just like a screwdriver, if you stab the guy in the eyeball, works great.
Yeah. Well, the only beef I ever had with passive is I just want to control it more, and you can do that on by amp, but the passive is gonna limit your frequency range that you're gonna be able to work with. It's gonna either have a high pass or a low pass filter on it, and you're gonna have to work around that or with it. So that's the only beef I ever had with them. But I've had plenty of systems that sounded great with passive crossovers.
Yeah, and there again, I mean, that's like, in the grand scheme of things, I don't even worry about that anymore. If it'll get us to the finish line, then that's what matters. That's all I care about. I wish more manufacturers would break up their 3-way sets into 4-channel mode through the passive crossovers like Focal does.
Yeah.
Because the factory, like when you get a factory car and it has a mid-range and a tweeter, 9 times out of 10, those 2 speakers are on the same channel of the amplifier. Okay, because they're in positions in the car where it really doesn't matter. Like their crossover points aren't going to be affected, and their volume isn't going to be affected if the tweeter is 6 inches away from the mid-range. They've figured all that shit out and have positioned them properly. It's like, okay, cool. They've done that for me. But on our side, the speaker manufacturers don't sell speakers like that. So I can't just grab the mid and the tweeter off of my 3-way set and not hook up the mid bass, because that totally screws up the passive crossover. It needs the ohm load of the mid bass driver on there in order to function properly.
Right.
So it would be nice if manufacturers just had like a switch or a jumper or something like that, to where I could replicate the mid bass tweeter channel 1 and 2 connection, simply because it's easier and we know it would work.
Yeah.
We've done it in the past when we've had the opportunity to do it. And there again, sometimes it comes down to speaker design. Like if the mid-range is a middler, it can play up to a certain frequency, then you just cross the tweeter over really, really high. So you could do it with a cap. So, maybe cross the tweeter over at 10,000, 60B, and that will just finish up with the mid range. So there's plenty of ways to do it that just get really geeky. And at the end of the day, just go, screw it, put an 8-channel amp in there and call it a day.
There you go. DSP the world.
Yeah. Play with it every day, but still not satisfied. Optical from head unit has cut noise from alternators, so Linkwitz Riley or Butterworth for which speaker sub, twid, meet, woofer. If you're trying to get more mid bass, I would just do it on the bottom of the front mid bass. So Linkwitz Riley between the tweeter and the mid, Linkwitz Riley between the mid and the mid bass, but then between the sub and the mid bass, go ahead and throw that at Butterworth 12 dB and make the other ones 24 dB and then turn the mid range down. Turn them down.
Is that your standard? I always use 24 dB on tweeter. Sometimes I'll go 18 if I'm getting crazy, but
it just depends. It depends on the speaker. It depends on the placement. We have what we like to try first.
Yeah.
And then we kind of go from there. If we're not getting the results we like, then we're like, okay, we need to do this. The biggest problem is like you said, sometimes mid bass just don't come in a car.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough.
Yeah, and you're like, what the frick?
Well, and then there's other situations like the Hyundai that we had where the mid bass would just set up perfectly.
Yeah, and it just rocked the fuck out, bro.
Yeah, and it's like right there in the pocket, and it's like a rounded design. And then you have the Trooper, which is a black hole for mid bass. So
pull up Thomas's thing there.
Let me see here.
Rockford Fosgate T1000 versus the D1 11,000 Arc Audio. Which one is better for bass? I don't think either one is worse than the other. They're going to be both pretty awesome amplifiers. You probably can get the Arc. The 1000 might be on back order still. I don't know. We've had some Rockford stuff on back order for a pretty long time with the Power Series amplifiers, where Brian would immediately just say Arc because he works for Arc, but
obviously,
but I mean, they're both really nice amplifiers, that's for sure. Those are two. I mean, I don't really think you're going to be disappointed either way. You're like, okay. But have you guys ever built a passive crossover? It's a great passive crossover calculator. Yeah. No,
I haven't designed one. I've built one.
I designed one. I grew up in the time where that was something you did, and I immediately go, wait.
Yeah.
Don't they have electronic versions of this?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's use those.
Right. Like if I'm having to figure out what I need to do for a passive crossover, I'm like, I'm sending Toyd a message.
Like, well, and the other thing too is like I grew up in a time where it was just like buy another amplifier.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, cool. We were running, Ryan had the 220 and the CRX 220 or 200 and the CRX 300, and you just run them into each other and create as many crossover points as you want.
Yeah.
You
remember the Phoenix Gold ZRVs or XRVs, the ones that done the 3-way setup?
I will bow to you on this one because I was never a Phoenix Gold fan.
Really?
Yeah.
I never ran one of these. I just seen them.
Yeah, I never paid any attention. Dude, back then it was Orion was God and Fosgate sucked.
Well,
so
me too.
You knew your enemy.
Yeah.
But everything else, just because you're like, oh, screw those guys.
Yeah.
Which is funny, I gotta say. So one of the weird moments I had during this little journey that we've been on is, when I grew up, that was it. That was like Rockford was the enemy, and Orion was gonna last forever and always be there, and all my buddies were just big Rockford fans. Like they're oh, dude, Rockford is the best, bro. You don't know nothing. You're like, you don't know nothing. And the irony in all of it is that, like, I know all the guys at Rockford. We've worked with Rockford. We're working with Rockford at SEMA. We're hired to go out there and talk the way of Rockford. And it's just funny how the world twists and changes. Yeah. You know, it's like if you'd have told 19, 20-year-old Dean that, like, dude, like, you're gonna do all this stuff with Rockford,
Yeah.
I would have told you were on crack. And crack didn't even exist back then. I'd be like, you're so on drugs, bro. There's no way. You know, like,
it really
no,
was.
trust me, man.
It was Rockford Fosgator. I started out, so the first good amp I had was a Sony ES 4-channel, and my buddy sold me a Rockford like 100.2 or something like that, and I was like, man, this amp is way louder, but I don't like the way it sounds compared to the one I had. And he's like, "Oh, it's louder. Who cares? Like, it's louder." And I was like,
no.
But back then I didn't think like I was like, yeah, he's right. It's louder. I mean, why would I put this? Then I went to Orion. I had 2 Orion amps or 2 Rockford amps. Then when I got that first 225, I was like, oh no, this is it, man. This is it. I'm not messing with Rockford Fosgate no more. And then that's when the division starts, because you had 2 shops. You had the Rockford shop, you had the Orion shop.
Yeah, we were the Orion shop, and my buddy Shane that works at Scar now was the works back at Scar, I should say, was the Rockford shop.
Yeah.
And you know, it was, I always thought it was funny, even when we finally got Rockford much later on, you know, it was like, this is so weird. Like, we're putting all this Rockford stuff in, and we just, you know, it was the enemy for so long. But Ryan, you know, they sold the directed, and along with Precision Power and all those other guys, and that just went to shit. Thank God, you know, that Crean Jacobs managed to fuck all that up so well.
Yeah, that was the downfall of the start of the downfall of the brands.
Yeah, you know, and I think JL was probably, you know, they were. I think they were smart at that time because they kind of picked up on what was going on.
Yeah,
and because they were the first to go out overseas, like they themselves didn't build their amplifiers here in the U.S. They, you know, they just, oh, screw it, let's go over there and have those guys do it. And, you know, as Manville says, you know, they were like, no, we're gonna design. And they're like, no, we have designs. You just need to build them our way. And like, which was totally not something anyone did back then. And they forced the issue, and that got the amplifiers that they wanted.
Yeah.
And at that point,
Flash amps were the best selling amps of all time at one point. I don't know if they still hold that record, but everyone had a Slash amp. Everyone had a Slash amp at one point.
I've never owned a JL amplifier.
Really? I had the 500. I think it was the 500/1 that literally was the best selling one, and that's the one that I had. Secondhand, I didn't buy new.
So here's the funny part. I've never owned a JL amplifier. I own one piece of JL equipment. I bought the Tweak.
Yeah.
I've never bought a piece of kicker equipment, but I own a ton of it. But I've never bought a piece. I've never bought a piece of Rockford equipment. No, I own a ton of it. You know, I always, but I have Orion stuff that I've paid for. You know, and it's like, damn. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It is. Well, the thing with kicker was, so I've bought so here, let me say this. Dirty secret, like the Kicker XPL is probably one of my favorite subwoofers, along with the Rockford Fosgate Punch Power series from like 97. But the W6 is better than both of those, in my opinion, in my experience, because I've had those subs.
Yeah.
And I thought they were better. And the other thing is, people wonder why you don't see a lot of old school kicker amps. Nobody was buying kicker amps back then.
No. Oh,
like,
no.
Nobody I knew ran, very few people.
We had kicker much later in life.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what series they were on to when we picked them up. But we just honestly, like, we never did much with their amplifiers. We did all their subs.
Right, yeah. You know? A lot of people ran the subs, of course.
You know, we tried Soundstream for a very small amount. Like, we had Soundstream right there. I like to think of it as like right before the the comet that killed all the dinosaurs
Yeah.
crashed into the earth. We had Soundstream right before that happened. And it was weird because it was like we had it and then we didn't. And it was like
What
it
happened?
was weird. You know, it was
Yeah.
gone. And then we brought in like Diamond when Diamond was a Max was co-owned by Max Factor, and they were making computer speakers for everybody.
Yeah.
Much people don't know that. The reason why Diamond originally failed the first time was because Compaq, the computer company, went out of business, and Diamond's biggest moneymaker was Compaq computers.
Yeah.
So the car audio side of it was just like a toy for them. You know.
I mean, they had some cool stuff even back in the day. But my biggest thing, and D always gets me for this, is all like if I didn't know about a brand back in the day, I'm like, oh yeah, it was flea market stuff. He's like, no, this was good stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't know about it, so my mind is flea market.
Well, you know, and that was like there was a time where, you know, like we were like Audison and stuff like that. We were looking for some brands. And I was just going through a buyer's guide. You know, I was just like, what about this brand? And he's like, dude, look at the price. I'm like, it's a buyer's guide, bro. I mean, what does that mean? We sold Macintosh. I mean, he's like, yeah, we ain't selling it no more. I was like, yeah, but that's because you suck as a salesman on the inside. And the outside, I was just like, yeah, you know, because that, you know, his problem was he sold with his wallet. So,
Yeah.
you know, he was always out trying to discount the shit out of everything. But, you know, if you bought from that company back in the day, everyone was happy because we weren't making money, but everyone was getting a deal. You know, they just, yeah, it does. Oh man, none of that. You know, back then you could do that. Like you could just like discount the shit out of everything before the internet existed and just sell a whole bunch of it, and like everyone was happy.
Nobody knew. Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays you really can't do that. So, you know.
Yeah. There was so like the first time that I came upon linear power,
Mm.
I was like, what in the flea market hell is this? And then I go to because even when you see the guts, it was much like acoustic amp.
Yeah, it was all like hand built, crazy.
Yeah, and which I
Yeah.
didn't know that I was just like, oh, it's just a cheap piece of junk. Then I started seeing the price, like, my God, these things are they're literally hand built stuff. So that's why they cost
Well,
money.
my linear power was Kicker's first amplifier.
Right, yeah.
So when Kicker was making speakers, they were using linear power amps for everything. So all the Kicker vans back in the day had linear power amplifiers in them.
Yeah.
Red linear power amplifiers. So you know, that was my first delve into them, and I was like, ooh, those are expensive. But everything was expensive. Everything, you know, it was like back then, it was like you had the Punch 45 was the benchmark. So Ryan had the 225 or 222. Linear Power had their version of that amplifier. Everyone had that 22 watt by 2 amplifier.
Right.
And it was like, why is this a thing?
What
Like,
was the Punch 45? Was it $199 or $299
it was
retail?
probably $299.
Yeah, I think it was $299, which think about when it came out, the equivalent dollars today, you're talking like a
Well, because we were selling 225 or 222s, I should say. I want to say they were like 229.
yeah, that sounds right.
And then the 220 GT came out,
Yeah.
which was the small little guy, and we sold a shit ton of those.
Yeah.
Those were cool.
Let me ask you this, do you remember the hot setup
Mhm.
before it was bought by Orion?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was
'Cause
like,
that
"Man,
was like a Circuit City or Best Buy.
a Best Buy brand, I think." But
Yeah,
it could be Circuit City, it's one or the other.
yeah. Because you say hot setup by Orion.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
the original hot setups were pretty solid, and then I think the first couple hot setup Orions were decent, and then it started getting a
Well,
little
I think the hot setup was probably geared off of Cobalt.
yeah, it
You
was.
know, because
Yeah,
when Cobalt came out, you had the 230, the 260, the 430, and then I think there was a bigger one that came out, like a mono sub amp that eventually came out. But like, dude, as soon as the Cobalt amps came out, it was like, because the other amps were just getting out of control as far as pricing goes. We were selling the fuck out. I still have scars from those heat sinks. Like, dude, and it was such a change from everything they did, because it was like it was blue. Orion was red and black. It had a sticker. Orion was always engraved or really nice, like plate. And it was like, dude,
they didn't file the edges down, apparently.
No, it was like, what a crappy, like, but we stole it. We sold the shit out of it, man. 210s with a 260 on it. Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, it's 240 watts. Yeah, it's 240 watts. And it doubles its power.
Dude, and I always like the Cobalts, I really didn't like, but I just like the look, especially because I was young, of the hot setups with the skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
The eyes light up when you power it on. I always thought they were cool, Yeah. Later on, I found out, I was like, oh yeah, those actually kind of suck. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, we're going through the stockroom, and I found some amp. I can't remember what brand it is, but they have a big skull on the top of them. And I was like, oh, these are cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why we got them.
We got them.
They're up on the top shelf now.
Yep.
So, well, that's it. That's all we have for you guys. Thank you so much for playing along with us, as always. I won't be here next week. We'll have to wait and see what Hi-Fi decides.
Yeah, probably no show. Well, we'll see.
But I'll be at SEMA, so make sure you follow the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the YouTubes. YouTubes and Instagrams would be the only place we'll be on that one. But new products. Some of you guys are going to be happy, and then some of you guys are going to complain like you always do.
Yeah, hey, they were going to do it anyway, so might as well complain about.
Yeah.
All right. If you guys want to talk about the machine, click the link in the description.
See ya.